Good morning, everybody. Actually, Rich left out one important piece of Dr. Lee's very impressive CV, just to complete the holy trinity of American technology companies. Not only was he most recently with Google as the head of Google China here, and of course heading Microsoft research here, he was also with Apple, so that completes the three. And so there's probably nobody better qualified to be doing actually what he is doing currently. Innovation Works, I think, fills a conspicuous gap in the ecosystem, as well developed as it is in the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship out here in China. And that gap, I think, from talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and talking to a lot of investors, is actually in mentoring. I think we see a lamentable paucity of actual quality mentoring of people who are serial entrepreneurs who aren't so busy doing their own thing now that they have really sort of the time and the inclination to put not just money back into the system, but to put their own rich experiences back in as mentors. I think that it's no exaggeration to say that Innovation Works, which Dr. Lee describes as a business creation platform. It's sort of a combination of a fund and an incubator. I'll let him, of course, say much more about what that is, but I think he fills a very important gap, a very conspicuous one in the ecosystem here. Innovation Works' value proposition, I think, if I understand it correctly, is that it's going to provide just that, mentoring from veteran entrepreneurs, as well as from other, key ingredients of the startup ecosystem that may not be, sort of adequately represented otherwise. For example, legal counseling and IT support and personnel support, as well as funding that comes from. It's a very, I think Innovation Works itself is a very unique model. I don't think it perfectly resembles at all any of the incubators that we've seen emerge in the West. So let's start with just that. What is your basic investment thesis, your strategy? What sectors are you focusing on with Innovation Works?
Well, if there's one sector, it's the people. So we want really, really great people. We think that in this general area of ICT, people makes all the difference. One great person is better than 10 or even 100 good people. So we really try to look at great people and then listen to what they have to say. But the specific investment areas we are currently most excited about are mobile internet and e-commerce. These are the two big ones.
Mobile internet and e-commerce. You mentioned people. I mean, it's not obviously just the heroic individual entrepreneur, but it's the teams ultimately. I mean, I've seen a lot of startups fail because although there is one charismatic and brilliant nucleus, he fails to build around him a good team. There's got to be good pairings of tech guys and business guys. How do you evaluate teams? How do you, are you combining teams yourself? Are you finding sort of natural matches? Or are you taking teams that are coming to you already paired up or already partnered up?
Well, Innovation Works was founded on the premise that the Chinese entrepreneurs are amazing. They have high potential, they're hardworking, but they also need coaching, more so than the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. And that's a result of the education system, the lack of experience, and maybe too much idol worshiping sometimes. So as a result, what we try to do is we look for great people with great potential, and we don't look for perfection. So, I mean, in an ideal world, we see someone who has a great, I think some intrinsic qualities are important. People have to be smart, have to be self-aware, they have to learn quickly. On top of that, if they're a great business person who needs help on technology or vice versa, we're fairly open-minded about that. We want to give young people a chance. We want to try to mentor and help them. Most of our CEOs right now are, in the mid-20s, certainly under 30. So we are a big believer in the young generation. And on the other hand, if someone shows the potential and really needs a lot of help, we're open to helping to put together teams. We're even open to taking a chance on a young person and calling them a founding executive, leaving the option open later to have to bring in some more seasoned. But in every case, we want to stretch the person as much as possible, but we also don't want to overpromise or overcommit. I think in China, sometimes it's believed, and I think there's some truth, that you want to stick with the initial CEO and not make a lot of replacements. And we try to stick to that as much as possible. But in some cases, we have such a great person, we're just a bit unsure, we would start them out as a founding executive. In some cases, we have a brilliant idea, not quite the right person. We would even get the company started with a tech lead and a good business person, both knowing that they're unlikely to be the future CEO. That's really not the ideal setup, but I think because of the imperfect set of possible candidates, high potential but imperfect, we have to be open to try a lot of different things.
I think we're all aware of what qualifications would make a candidate stand out. I'm sure that given your position in the firmament of information technology here, you're simply inundated in resumes, not just deals, but in actual individual entrepreneurs who want to work with you, who don't necessarily have a business idea. Talented technology people. What for you are the red flags? What sets off alarms when you see somebody who makes you feel like this person is not qualified? I mean, I think we focus a lot on the positive attributes, but what scares you off of an individual?
Well, certainly dishonesty. Because people are always trying to impress VCs like us, and when they do that and go too far out of the way, that would be a giant red flag. I also think lack of self-awareness is another one. I think sometimes people are just maybe a little too carried away with their abilities or their knowledge of the field. So that's another one. I'd rather fund someone who is less knowledgeable but knows so and is willing to learn than someone who thinks he or she knows everything but clearly is dishonest or exaggerating.
Okay, very good. And who are some of the individuals in the room who you think fit these characteristics, who you would identify as lacking self-awareness or being just very... a friend of mine actually recently attended Y Combinator's demo day. I think that a lot of people are familiar with Y Combinator, and I think comparisons have been made, and I'd love you to actually talk a little bit about how you're very different from them. But one of the things that Y Combinator does is that 3 months into a residency, the entrepreneurs are given the opportunity to present in front of as many as 300 or 400 potential or actual angel investors. What kind of exposure opportunities are you giving the companies that you're incubating and funding?
No exposure. As you know, in China, you have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes we talk a little bit too much about what we're doing. We already see copycats out there. So, sorry, no exposure until we're ready. Our model with the Y Combinator is significantly different. I visited with Paul last month, and I think he's doing an amazing job. We're very impressed with what they're doing. But China is a bit different. I guess I can talk a little bit about a few of the differences. One is really the cost of human capital. Paul is very concerned about the initial team getting too large. So he wants like 2 or 3 people as the ideal size. And basically, they're locked up in the room, and 3 to 6 months they develop their thing for the demo day on the tiniest amount of money provided by Y Combinator. I think it's very clever and very economical. And I asked him, why not give them, sometimes a good idea needs a larger team to validate. Why not have a larger one? And his concern is really that the pay scale in the Silicon Valley would quickly cause that not to be a good investment. And then we compared pay that he would have to pay versus what we pay in China at InnovationWorks. And there's still a very large gap of maybe a factor of 6 or 7. So one of the big differences at InnovationWorks is if you're an entrepreneur and you come to us, we can, and we often do, give you 5 wonderful engineers to work with within 1 or 2 weeks. And I think every startup CEO would really die for that kind of an opportunity because recruiting is very difficult. So that's one thing we can do in China because the vast pool of talent and these engineers want to come and learn, and the pay is much less than the US. So we actually make a much bigger initial investment than the Y Combinator. That's one significant difference.
I imagine the equity deal is different too then, though. I mean, Y Combinator puts in only, what, $20,000 to a little team or per entrepreneur, and they take only, what, 5 to 10% equity. What's the equity deal that you offer?
For a typical entrepreneur who comes to us, we would probably the average funding at the very early seed stage might be 150 to 200,000, and we might take 15. No, US dollars. US dollars.
Okay, well.
And we might take, on the order of 15 to 25%. So it's significantly different. So we tend to be pickier up front. Their entry barrier is, well, not entry barrier, but their level of scrutiny before giving money is much less than ours. We have a larger team. We review it in much more detail because we're funding at a larger level. That's another big difference. Another big difference is we're also a fund, and so once the project is demonstrated, we have a separately run organization that is a fund, that's a captive fund that will invest in the angel Series A and potentially Series B. So we want to really bet big on our deals so that our share does not dilute over time.
I was actually surprised to hear you say that you're having trouble actually locating investable deals. I'm actually very, very surprised to hear that. I mean, considering the flood of PowerPoints that you must get every day.
Yeah, well, maybe I didn't communicate well. Not quite trouble. I would say we had to work harder than we thought to find the good investable deals. So to date, we have made 9 seed-level investments. So for something that's in operation for about 6 months, that's a pretty healthy number. However, these, we had to work really, really hard to find them. What I was trying to say is that there are great people, great deals, great opportunities, but they don't always come to you. You have to work really hard to find them.
That's right. There is sort of an obsession in China with venture as a source of funding. And actually, so many of the startups actually do end up being funded primarily by venture capitalists, and despite the word venture in their name, we all know them to be extremely conservative in their investing. They really like to invest in surefire things, in what I like to call the low-hanging fruit. And often when you're an entrepreneur and you have 3 minutes in front of a VC, rather than pitch something really complex and convoluted, you go for, we are the fill in the blank with a familiar Silicon Valley funded company. We are the LinkedIn of China. We are the Facebook of China. This is something that's promoted what we jokingly call the C2C model in China, the copy to China model, which is lamentable, but perhaps that's the stage we're at. Are you, to use maybe the low-hanging fruit metaphor, are you reaching up into higher branches? Are you, because of your unique position, able to fund more innovative companies?
Yeah, not only are we doing that, but I would forecast that the C2C model you described will soon come to an end.
Hallelujah.
And let me tell you what we are doing. I think it's difficult to have a fundamental technology paradigm shift breakthrough company in China. I think it's just that the roots are just not quite all there yet. The education system, I think the availability of capital, the ease with which you can build something simpler with a good business model. So I think it's the ingredients are not there for that, a true, breakthrough paradigm shift. On the other hand, the simple copycat just doesn't work anymore. I mean, if you go take a look, there are 125 Groupon copycats. Now, how many can possibly make it? And as a VC, I mean, why would you bet on most of them or maybe any of them? I think what's more likely to emerge and what we try to look for at InnovationWorks is people who do look deeply at what's exciting in the US. They do study the TechCrunch list, they go to demo events, they understand what's exciting in US, Europe, and Japan, and they're inspired and understand the deep reasons with which things work. And then they combine these ideas and apply it in a localized way to China. So it's no longer copying an idea, but maybe inspired by 2 or 3, and then putting them together with the localized ingredient to build something that really is innovative experience for the user, but it's perhaps not 100% brand new.
And what about market focus? Are you funding companies who are aimed primarily locally, or are you also looking at companies that are maybe doing development work here with the end of going internationally? And if so, if you are, what kind of leveraging are you making of your own network to help them in international expansion?
The great majority of our efforts are looking at local markets, or at least China first or China only. I think only one of the 9 is looking at overseas markets. I think when that happens, obviously myself and some of my team members, we have global experience, but we don't see us as the go to US or go outside China experts either, because frankly, we've been here for too long. But we know the people who can help them. So I would tend to reach out to people in Silicon Valley who can maybe give them ideas and hints and perhaps participate in the next round.
Without denigrating any of these other 6, what are 3 of some of the 9 projects that you've got underway that have you most excited? And can you give us a quick, without giving away too much, I understand you're already being emulated here. Can you talk briefly about 3 of them?
Right. Sure. Talk about a very high level. Let me talk instead about the trends that excite us, okay?
Okay.
And then obviously the companies are built on these trends. I think one trend is on the mobile internet, and in particular on several elements of the mobile internet. Everyone's doing mobile internet, but we see things maybe a little bit differently than many others. First, we see mobile internet as a purely youth-driven phenomenon. 75% of the users are under 27, so you got to appeal to those people. Second thing is we see that China is well behind the US in the super smartphone adoption, and yet we are projecting that will dramatically change in the next year to year and a half, as prices will dramatically come down with Taiwan and China companies creating a whole new hardware platform on which rich devices can be had for about 1,000 RMB. So I think that would be a dramatic opportunity. Wow. Third, we think because it's a youthful audience, the cost of 3G is too high and will remain too high, because the carriers, don't want to see what happened to AT&T happen to them. That is the, run out of bandwidth. So they have to keep the prices high. Therefore, the interesting mobile experience is actually a rich device, young user, limited bandwidth usage. So it's going to call for a completely different set of companies than what is taking off in the US today.
2.5G youth-oriented content on low-end new smartphones. That's the sweet spot for you. Okay.
No, not quite that. But I can't say any more than that.
Okay.
But close.
And of the 9 companies you're funding, how many of them are actually right now in the mobile internet space?
7 are related to mobile internet.
That is a clear focus. What about individuals? If you were to single out 3 people to sort of give an idea of the type of superstars you've managed to attract, tell us about three people that you've brought on.
Okay. All right. So let me talk sort of just in without mentioning the companies they come from, the types of people. One is a former chief architect from one of the top Chinese internet companies. He's really bright and he's been there, done that, wants to start the next thing. A second one is a very young, just 2 years out of school person, but he has been starting companies since he was in college. So he's got like 6 years of entrepreneurial experience. He won a bunch of contests. He's already built a profitable company, and he's about to start the next one.
Wow.
A third one is another 27-year-old. He's 5 years out of school. He's built one company, sold it, and he's in his second company, which just raised a lot of money. But as one would often see in China, the new fund raised did not give him a fair share, and he was sort of taken advantage of by his the first set of people who funded him at the angel level. So he's unhappy, and he left, in fact, with half of his team to start a new company, and we're funding him.
Yesterday, I tweeted that I would be doing an onstage interview with Dr. Lee, and I sort of crowdsourced for some questions. The first one that I have for you from Twitter comes from Jenny Lee, who heads Girls in Tech. She asks out of New York, and she asks, what are the challenges in China for women entrepreneurs? Are any of what's the gender ratio right now at Innovation Works?
Actually, 1 of the 9 is led by a woman.
All right.
So that's I think that's a higher ratio than most.
Unfortunately, yes. Lamentably, that's so. Yeah.
I'm afraid that that's really unfair. I think the China environment, there are just sort of a few beliefs. Women shouldn't be engineers. Women shouldn't start companies, and I think it's wrong and unfair. And I think all of us should recognize that women make great leaders. In many ways, better leaders than men. And I sure hope we have, at some point in my life, I can say half the companies this year we funded are led by women.
We have another question from Twitter, appropriately enough, about microblogging. It does come from Twitter, after all. A Twitter user named Bitin, B-I-T-I-N-N, asks, do you think that microblogging will get big in China? And if so, would you risk money on a company like Fanfo? We've seen the phenomenon of Xinlang's Weibo, of Xinlang's microblog, but Sina's, right?
Well, Fanfo is certainly not available for investing at this time. I think the phenomenon is definitely catching on. I'm an avid user of Sina microblog. I use it as well as to post as well as to read. I do believe there is a real need, and the users love it. But it's not an area that any company can start a company in. The regulations, I think, still are unknown in the space, and I would be optimistic that Sina and other companies like it will continue to do a good job. But I would be a little hesitant to fund a new startup unless they really deeply understand the regulations and demonstrate and prove to me that they are likely to have a sustainable company. But I'm going to be skeptical about that.
I'm so surprised, given the obvious, revenue-generating potential of microblog.
Oh, you want to ask about the revenue? I'm actually a little bit optimistic about that.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah. Well, it's a media, right? It's a media. It's broadcasting. And people are following because of their choice. So, whereas on a Facebook, I think it's really not very appropriate to put sort of advertising-like content for people, because these are your friends. But on Twitter, I think people who follow me are chosen to do that themselves. If I want to put an occasional advertising for my company or my product, I think I can do that, and I think they can drop me if they don't like it. So given that nature of the self-selection, sure, I think some notion of ads and some intelligent targeting will get in there over time. Yeah, I'm not sure it'll be the best business model, but I think it's a clear media play.
There are a lot of investors in the world and a lot of people who have sort of made their name as a guru in the internet in China, who will spout homilies at the drop of a hat and give you their words of wisdom. But I think there are probably few people who are, without sounding sycophantic here, who are regarded as a wise man of the internet like Dr. Lee. Kaifu, if you had a word of advice for a young entrepreneur just coming out of Tsinghua, or somebody with, somebody coming out of Beidao or Tsinghua or Fudan, and who has real entrepreneurial aspirations, what would you, if you could sit down with them, what would you tell them?
Well, I think it's important to really know what you know and what you don't know. It's really important to find a mentor who can guide and help you. It's important to drop some of the false conception that one brilliant idea will solve all problems. It's important to realize that in an entrepreneurial startup world, the most important thing is the team, the execution, and also the basically the team, the execution, and the discipline to get things out, more so than the generally believed, I have a great idea, I got money, then leave me alone, I can do whatever I want. Continue to be humble and learn.
Brilliant words of advice, and I hope people all take them to heart. I want to hear a warm round of applause for Dr. Kaifu Lee. Thank you very much.